Hey YouTube, I'd like to welcome you back to Bloody Fork Homestead. And you're looking at my garage, which is a constant task to try to keep it organized, but I know where everything is. I know how to get my hands on it here. And what I'd like to talk about a few of the maintenance tasks that are essential for the homestead. A few things that you need to know how to do to have your homestead running efficiently. And one of those things I'd like to demonstrate first is how to sharpen your chainsaw. I've done a lot of things with chainsaws trying to sharpen them. One of the things that I've done is to buy the appropriate file. You have two different filings to make for your chainsaw. You have the cutting depth, which you do with this particular file on the particular notch. That gives you your depth of your cut. And then you sharpen the actual bar chain with a file. But one of the tools that I found especially helpful is this particular rascal, and you can buy different versions, and this one isn't expensive. I think it's about $30. Steel makes this one, but what's so great about it is your kerf has to be a certain depth, and you file it down so that it'll give you the appropriate cut. And sometimes that's kind of guesswork for people. And then this file you do to sharpen your chainsaw. But the problem is, many of us don't know to what depth to make this, and I know there's gauges you can use, and there's other sharpening mechanisms you can use, but to me it was always kind of guesswork. But I found that this thing is especially helpful, and I'll demonstrate it for you right now. The thing I like about this particular tool is it's made for dummies like me. There's a picture right here that gives you a picture of a chainsaw. I don't know if you can see that on screen very well. That picture is helpful because on this picture it has the bar sticking out this way and it has the engine back this way. So I know this is how it's lined up. And there's also, on these bars right here on either side, there's etched a little line, and that tells me that I need to have that lined up with the bar. If I have those little lines lined up with the bar, again the lines are etched right across here. If it's lined up, I know that it's good to go. And I found too that the files on this thing are especially good. I bought files before like this one from County Line. TSC sells this. It's a piece of junk. Don't file very well at all. The files that they give you with this, and they're replaceable, are very good. They cut very good. But again, using the picture, I know this way, and using my little lines, I line it up, and all you do is go across, and you go back and forth a couple times, and you're good to go. Go to the next one. You go across a couple times, and it's good to go. The next one, go across a couple times, it's good to go. And here. A couple times, it's good to go. It's good to go. And then after you're done, you can stick your little finger on there, and hopefully you don't cut it because it is sharp. It works very well. I use a little piece of tape, and after I get that part done, I pull it back, and I know I can. That's my point. I can bring this. I start my hand here and bring it all the way here. I know I can sharpen the next section. And you do the same thing. What's nice about this thing is after you sharpen that side, you turn it around, follow the picture, and line it up correctly. Do a few good swipes and you get shavings off, and your chainsaw stays nice and sharp. A tool I'd recommend. It's very much worth the price because it gives you the proper depth for your depths cut here, and it also gives you your right angle for your chain, and it works very well. I highly recommend it. One of the best tools I've bought for a while. We're going to go on to something else, but again, sharpening your chainsaw is relatively easy if you have the right tools. Thank you. Yes, welcome back, YouTube. And I'll just introduce another set of tools that I find very helpful on the homestead, and that is the Maddox. This is a 5-pound Maddox, and this is a 2.5-pound Maddox. And the one that I like to use the most is the 2.5-pound. Call it a ladies' Maddox, I don't care. If you swing this sucker very much, you're going to feel your oats. And I find that this one is helpful for digging through clay, for digging through dirt. But this one I found is very helpful for roots, for if you're having to cut out roots under the ground, using your shovel to get to them, and using this Maddox to cut through the roots. And one of the important things is a Maddox has to be sharp, especially if you're going to use it for cutting through roots, things like that. So this little tool right here is one of the best tools to have on the workbench. That's the grinding wheel. If you start to file this thing by hand, boy, it'll wear you out in a hurry, and it takes a long time. But this thing, the grinding wheel, and I was trying to find one of these. One with a big enough motor, the right RPMs, and one that won't bog down easily, and one that has an accessible wheel. And I found this one, and I found that you can pay about $200 for something similar for the RPM and the motor size, or I paid $15 for this one. I found it at an antique store. Somebody was selling it as an antique for 15 bucks, and I said, that's not an antique, that's a tool. Some of the best tools I've found are in the antique stores. The pitchfork that I use all the time came from an antique store, because most of the junk that they make now isn't nearly as good. But this little tool, it doesn't have a shield on it, and I had to wire up another plug because there was no wire on it, but it does the job. I'll go ahead and plug it in, and it's good to go. But with your Maddox, particularly ones that you're going to use to cut through roots, it's important to keep them sharp. And it's very easily done on a grinding wheel. You can and that's really all it takes to put a nice sharp edge on it. And you can also grind some from the other side. You don't want to cut off too much because you'll have it down to nothing after a while, but really that's all it takes to keep a nice sharp Maddox. What I try to do too is use some WD-40 on these after they get wet, but this one still has a little mud on it. But very important tool. And this one, I've cut through a lot of roots. We expanded our garden up on top and had to cut through a lot of roots, and this little rascal will help if you keep it sharp. Thank you. Oh yes, welcome back, YouTube. Speaking of tools and maintenance of tools, this is a new addition for us. We bought this back, I believe it was in April, right around Easter time. In fact, I put some money down on it right at Easter time. It's a 2002 Polaris Ranger. This is a 500, and when we bought it, the gentleman we bought it from took good care of it. 2002, he had new tires on it. He reupholstered the seat, and he said that there was a couple problems that he was aware of. One was the battery was going out, and the other was there was a caliper that was leaking, a brake caliper, and right down in this area it was leaking brake fluid. And the thing that I decided, well, he wanted $2,200 for this machine, and price a new one, see what they run. I thought, well, thank you, Lord, and I made sure we put some money down on it. And one of the first things that we did was we changed the oil in it, and I also dug into the brake caliper. Over here, it was leaking. I found where it was leaking from, and it turned out to be about a 5-cent O-ring that I had on hand, and that's all it took to fix it. I've been doing some basic maintenance on it, but these things are a great tool for the homestead. My wife and I, we go up to the upper garden here, and we move mulch. We did several layers or loads of mulch this past week, and we moved dirt. We harvest things and put it in, going up and down the mountain. One of the most essential tools. We are very young, 65 and 66, and I can see where this thing's going to be a lifesaver. I had 777 hours on it. The oil is easy to change. There's a little place to drain it right under the seat, and we changed the oil. We changed the brake fluid, and I fixed the leak on it. We put a new battery in it. It was starting to go bad, and the gentleman again that sold it to us gave us a good break. And so we had $2,000 that we paid for it, and some money in parts, and it's been a blessing so far. You're looking at another tool we bought for the homestead, and that's our EconoHorse Troy-built tiller, and this is a 6 horsepower. And I don't use this thing a whole lot, but I will use it just before we really get hot and heavy into gardening season. My preferred tool is the shovel and the rake. But this thing is a lifesaver sometimes as far as getting things done more quickly. The old model of Troy-built has the stainless steel, or not stainless, it's metal carburetor, and I'd highly recommend the older ones. The maintenance on this thing is very easy. To change the oil if you have to do any work on the carburetor, or change an air filter or a plug, or the belts. I found that the belts on this thing, I can get them at the local auto dealership. Just match up the size, and there's 2 belts, one for forward and one for the reverse, and it's a very easy maintenance on these, especially the older models. They made them better at that time, but this has been a valuable tool too. And speaking of maintenance, I try to change the hydraulic fluid in it every year, and I also try to change out the oil every year. I use 100% gas in it, and it's been a blessing so far. We paid $300 for this thing, and we've gotten a lot of use out of it already. But you don't have to spend a whole lot of money for tools. A lot of people, this was an older gentleman, he was in his 80s, and he couldn't really do what he used to do with it anymore. He kept it in his garage, took good care of it, and wanted to part with it for $300. It's well worth the price. I know that they're much more expensive than that now, but this has been a great addition to the homestead. Yes, welcome back to Bloody Fork Homestead. I have before you here our barn. And I did another video when I was on top of this barn trying to repair some of the leaky areas and replacing a lot of leaky nails and replacing it with screws that were new and have washers on them. But I've also started to paint this one. I started at the top and have all of the top 2/3 done. I just have some at the bottom to finish up here. And I'm hoping this next week to have this part of it, just the front of the barn. I'll go to the back after this. It's missing some pieces, some boards on the other side. But there was some rot, but not a whole lot. It was in fairly good shape. But it started going downhill. And that's another aspect of maintenance. If you don't keep your outer buildings maintained, they're going to fall down. Here in the mountains, I can take you down all kinds of roads here where tobacco barns, other barns are falling down. And many of them had great bones. This is solid oak, the rough sawn oak, up to 3 stories high. And I'd hate to build this sucker today. It would be very expensive. But doing the maintenance when it's required makes all the difference. If you're going to have a homestead, if you're going to have a small farm, whatever it is, it's worth the investment. Put the time and the money into it, because this is going to last us however long we're here. I know we're only a young 65. We might only have another 45, 50 years to go. Who knows? Who knows how long you have? But we want to maintain things, and while we have health, we'll try to keep it up, because I'm sure after a while it'll get more difficult to do that. But I'm hoping to finish a painting. But maintenance on outer buildings are so important. If you let it go, it's going to bite you. It will fall down. It will rot. And I can see it all around me. Up and down this road we have some, and every road around here you have barns that are falling down because of not doing the maintenance that's required.